So here I am with executive producer, no less, of Big Finish, Jason Haigh-Ellery. Good to see you.
Hello.
Again. Hello.
Good to see you.
Essentially, we're here to talk about the genesis of Big Finish, as it were. Now, there had been a history of audio drama, but you were the first company who went out there and secured the rights from the BBC. How did that come about?
Well, I've been involved with Audio Visuals, which was a fan group that had done amateur Doctor Who audio productions back in the early 80s. And the group was run by Gary Russell and Bill Baggs and Nick Briggs. And Bill had left quite early on, and Gary, Nick, and John Ainsworth had taken the audio productions forward. Bill went on to create BBV, which then went and did all the Stranger videos and stuff like that, very successfully, and did Auton, for example. And we were still very happy doing audio productions. And I came in as a very bad actor on one of the productions. I'd known Gary since I was about 15, because he lived down the road from me. And when they did in Doctor Who magazine, they did a look at a number of the fanzines that were being made, and Gary's address was down the road. So being a very upfront kid, I went and knocked on his door and said, "I understand you do a Doctor Who fanzine." He went, "Yeah." He said, "Great, can we talk about it? Because I want to do one." So we got chatting. And we're a similar age, me and Gary. And so we've known each other for coming up 30 years. No, 40 years. God, nearly 40 years. Ridiculous. And we got chatting. He invited me to be an actor in one of his productions, which he was directing. I did that. And then subsequently, I got roped in to do a little bit of work doing sound effects and so forth. Very interested in how this actually happened, how it was put together. So fast forward a few years, I'd gone to university, come back, working in a company, doing very well. And Gary and I had always kept in touch. And he said, we're doing, we want to go to the BBC and ask them if we can do audio visuals for real, to do a professional audio adventures of Doctor Who. And I thought this was a brilliant idea. I thought there would be a market for it, because this is a few years after the television movie, and it was assumed that Doctor Who wouldn't be coming back. And I think, they talk about it as the wilderness years. And during that period of time, I think you were in two different camps. There was Doctor Who's not coming back, so the audios, the books, the comics, that is what Doctor Who is now. Or you were in the camp that hopefully it would come back. Might take 10 years, might take 15, but it would come back eventually. And I was more in the camp of, if we want Doctor Who, we're going to have to do it ourselves. So went to the BBC, we had the conversation. As some people know, the BBC basically said, "What else have you done?" And the reality was, we couldn't really say we were doing the amateur version of Doctor Who. So we said, well, we've had some experience, blah, blah, blah. So they said, go and get another license, go and do it, and then come back and talk to us. So knowing Paul Cornell and knowing Virgin, we inquired after doing audio versions of the Benny Summerfield books. And the Bennies were available, and they thought it'd be a really good idea to have that cross-pollination and go into a new medium. And we got the rights, did the first few books, then we took them into the BBC, showed them what we'd done, and the BBC loved them and said, great, you can have the rights to Doctor Who. So in fact, the time was less than a year between us going in and asking initially and going in and being given the license. And then we had to keep it quiet. There was an event when Gary and I were at in which they said, "Oh, woe is us. There's not going to be any new Doctor Who. There's going to be no new Doctor Who. No." And we were sitting there going, "Yes, there is. Yes, there is." But we couldn't tell anyone. And we got the doctors in for the first studio session, and we went with the doctors we knew from conventions, etc. So we knew Peter Davison, Colin Baker, and Sylvester McCoy ourselves. And we just asked them, "Would you do it?" And they were like, "Yeah, sure." So they came in, did it. Little did they know they were still going to be doing it 21 years later. No one thought that. To be honest with you, as I've said before, I honestly thought when we signed, we agreed to do 6 productions per year for 3 years. That was the original contract, which meant that we would have done 18 productions. And if we had got to the end of it and sales had been like that and then slowly gone down, and we got to the end and we'd done 18 and we got them over the line, we would have been more than happy. We would have walked away going, "We've done our bit, and we've managed to get Doctor Who back in production in one way or another," and everyone would have been happy. What we didn't foresee, and I certainly didn't foresee, was just how much demand there was for new Doctor Who. And when you consider this year we're doing something like 322 hours of drama, and a lot of that is Doctor Who, you can see how the company has grown, but also what the demand is. It became very early on, within the first 2-3 months, I went back to Gary and said, "We have to do these monthly, not every 2 months, every month," because the sales were really, really good and the demand was there. And all I was getting was at the time letters, because there was very few people on email, but I was getting letters from people saying, we need more of this. When is the next one coming out? So we then started producing them monthly, and then after about a year of that, we were approached by Nick Briggs, who'd been doing quite a lot of the directing and post-production, and he said, "Look, I've got this idea called Dalek Empire." And at the time, Gary was working part-time for Big Finish and part-time somewhere else as well. And he said, "Well, I don't really have the time to do it." And Nick said, "Well, I'll produce it." And Gary was like, "That's fine. You do it, fine." So we committed to doing an extra 4 releases a year. So we had 16, and we were like, "Well, you know, will they take it? Is the market going to be saturated?" And they weren't. They just lapped it up. And we are now in a position where we might have 8 releases per month. And that, you know, as I said, that's more than was expected in the first year. So, you know, it's a development for us, and we produce what people want. That's the interesting thing.
You mentioned the Dalek Empire. Of course, that featured at the time little-known actor David Tennant.
Yeah, whatever happened to him?
Yeah.
Well, David ended up doing 16 productions for us before he became famous, as it were. Well, he was, by the end of it, it was Casanova came out. I remember he'd just done a pilot for a comedy show with my friend Claire Buckfield, and Claire and I were up in the Edinburgh Festival, and we phoned David because we were talking about David, and I was like, "Well, we just phoned him." So we did, and we had a little chat. And he said, "Oh, I'm doing Casanova." And I was like, "Wow, okay." And he was, you know, I won't say some of the stuff he was saying about it, because it's a little bit risque in comparison to some of the other stuff he'd done.
Yeah.
So he was like, "Oh, okay." But it was then I was thinking, "Oh, right, bloody hell, well done, David. This is going to make him a big star." I no thought that he would end up being Doctor Who. He was a massive Doctor Who fan, obviously. And when I have told this story before, but when we were talking to him about doing a role for us, and it was an English role, and he'd previously been using his normal Scottish accent, he said very sweetly, he said, "Look, I can lose the Scotch," and because he'd been working on an English accent, and I'm not surprised he's done so well, because he's so well loved as well, because he's such a lovely bloke, and he's been so supportive of us over the years. And as you know, he went off and did Doctor Who, and obviously it was not right for him to work with us during that period of time. He did Doctor Who, and then he needed a bit of space, and then he came to us and said, I need to do this again. I need to do Doctor Who. Come on, let's sort this out. So we did. And it's been fantastic working with David, and he hopefully will be doing it for many years to come.